Mary Lindell, the Countess who helped 7,000 allies escape occupied France, November 1943. Night. A civilian passenger train thunders along the steel tracks between Biarritz and Paris. Inside a dimly lit carriage, the air is thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Sitting rigidly between two armed agents of the German Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, is a 48-year-old woman in a tailored coat. Her name is Mary Lindell. She is the Countess de Milleville. She is also the most wanted British agent in occupied France. She knows exactly what awaits her at the Gestapo headquarters in Paris. Interrogation, torture, a firing squad. Mary turns to the guard on her left. With the imperious, commanding tone of a high-born aristocrat, she demands to use the lavatory. The guard, momentarily intimidated by her sheer authority, agrees. He escorts her to the cramped washroom and stands outside the thin wooden door. Inside, Mary does not hesitate. She forces open the narrow, frosted glass window. The freezing night air screams into the small compartment. The train is moving at 40 miles per hour. She climbs onto the toilet seat, forces her shoulders through the tight frame, and throws herself out into the black void. She hits the gravel embankment with bone-shattering force. But the SD guard hears the window slide. He kicks open the door, leans out into the rushing wind, and raises his Luger pistol. He fires into the dark. A 9mm bullet strikes Mary. Lindell directly in the cheek, tearing through her skull and exiting the base of her neck. She collapses into the freezing mud, bleeding out beside the tracks. The Gestapo assumes she is dead. They are wrong. You cannot kill the Countess that easily. To understand the absolute, unyielding iron will of Mary Lindell, you have to look past the aristocratic titles and the pearls. You have to look at a woman who spent her entire life running toward the sound of gunfire. Born Gertrude Mary. Lindell, on September 11, 1895, in Surrey, England, she was the daughter of a wealthy upper-class family. She was raised in a world of strict Victorian manners and quiet domesticity, but Mary possessed a rebellious, fiercely independent spirit that refused to be caged by high society. When the First World War ignited in 1914, 19-year-old Mary did not stay home to knit socks for the troops. She volunteered for the Red Cross as a nurse. She deployed to the absolute slaughterhouse of the Western Front. She did not flinch at the sight of shattered bodies or the smell of gangrene. She worked in forward casualty clearing stations under heavy artillery fire. Her bravery was so reckless and profound that she was decorated with the French Croix de Guerre and an award from the Russian Tsar. After the armistice, she married a French aristocrat, the Comte de Milleville, and settled into a life of luxury in Paris. She had 3 children. She hosted elegant dinner parties. She could have lived the rest of her life in comfortable obscurity. But in May 1940, the sky darkened again. The German panzer divisions smashed through the French defenses. The French army collapsed. As the Wehrmacht marched toward Paris, panic consumed the city. Mary Lindell did not panic. She put on her old First World War nursing uniform. She painstakingly sewed her British and French military medals onto her chest, ensuring the incoming Germans knew exactly who they were dealing with. As the Nazi swastika was raised over the Eiffel Tower, Mary Lindell went to work. The immediate aftermath of the fall of France left thousands of British and Allied soldiers stranded behind enemy lines. They were hiding in barns, terrified, and hunted by German patrols. Mary realized these men needed a way out. She began gathering them up. She weaponized her greatest asset, her class. The German military was deeply hierarchical. When a German checkpoint guard stopped her car, Mary did not cower. She rolled down the window and screamed at them in flawless upper-class French and German. She demanded to know how dare a lowly corporal delay the Comtesse de Milleville on her medical rounds. The guards, confused and intimidated by her overwhelming arrogance, routinely waved her through. Hidden in the trunk or the back of her ambulance were British soldiers. She successfully smuggled dozens of men across the demarcation line into unoccupied Vichy France. But in January 1941, her luck ran out. The German military police caught her. She was thrown into a freezing prison and sentenced to 9 months in solitary confinement. Most people would have been broken by the isolation. Mary Lindell was infuriated. Upon her release, she was marked for rearrest. So she disguised herself as an elderly French governess, slipped across the Pyrenees Mountains, and escaped to London. She walked into the offices of MI9, the highly secretive British military, intelligence department dedicated to escape and evasion. She told them she wanted to go back. She told them her work wasn't finished. The British commanders were hesitant. Mary was controversial, abrasive, and entirely incapable of following orders, but they could not deny her results. In October 1942, under the dark of a new moon, Mary Lindell climbed into the back of a blacked-out Westland Lysander aircraft. She was flown across the English Channel and dropped into a secret field in central France. She was now operating under the code name Marie Claire. She established the legendary Marie Claire line. It was a highly organized, lethal logistical network stretching from Paris to the Spanish border. When Allied bombers were shot down over Europe, the surviving airmen were handed off to Mary's network. She provided them with forged identity papers, civilian clothes, and safe houses. She personally escorted high-value targets, including the surviving British, commandos from the famous Cockleshell Heroes raid, right under the noses of the Gestapo. It was grueling, terrifying work. In December 1942, she was severely injured when a car full of Vichy collaborators rammed her bicycle. She suffered a fractured skull and massive internal injuries. She directed the escape line from her secret hospital bed, refusing to let the network collapse. By late 1943, the Gestapo was closing in. Her network had been infiltrated by a double agent. This brings us back to the freezing night in November, the speeding train, and the gunshot in the dark. Mary Lindell lies bleeding on the tracks, a bullet having shattered her skull. Miraculously, she is found alive. She is dragged to a Luftwaffe hospital where a German surgeon, astonished by her sheer refusal to die, painstakingly reconstructs her face and neck. But there is no mercy for a captured spy. As soon as she can stand, she is thrown into a cattle car. In September 1944, Mary Lindell arrives at Ravensbrück, the notorious all-female concentration camp in northern Germany. Ravensbrück is a factory of human destruction. Women are starved, beaten, and worked to death in the freezing mud. When Mary arrives, her head still heavily bandaged from the gunshot wound. She takes one look at the despair around her and goes to war. She refuses to be a victim. She uses her medical background to secure a position in the camp hospital, a horrific place where Nazi doctors conduct brutal experiments. She uses this position to smuggle microscopic amounts of food and medicine to the weakest prisoners. But her most dangerous act is an administrative one. The German High Command consistently denies that they are holding British or American female operatives in their concentration camps. They plan to execute them all before the Allies can liberate the camp, erasing the evidence of their war crimes. Mary Lindell realizes that the only way to save these women is to prove they exist. Under the constant threat of execution, she begins stealing pieces of scrap paper and pencil stubs. She secretly moves through the barracks at night, compiling a master list of every Allied intelligence agent, courier, and downed nurse in the camp. She memorizes their names, their ranks, and their serial numbers. She hides this list in the lining of her filthy camp pinafore. In April 1945, the Third Reich is collapsing. The Soviet Red Army is miles away. The camp commandant begins preparing for the final mass executions, but the Swedish Red Cross arrives at the gates, negotiating the release of a small number of prisoners. Mary Lindell steps forward. She produces the hidden list from her rags. She forces it into the hands of the Red Cross officials. She demands, with the exact same aristocratic fury she used at the checkpoints in Paris, that every single woman on her list be evacuated immediately. Because of her sheer, terrifying willpower, the German commanders blink. Dozens of British and American women, operatives who would have certainly been executed days later, are loaded onto the white Swedish buses and driven to freedom. Mary Lindell saved their lives. Following the liberation, Mary returned to Paris. She was a highly decorated hero, but she was never an easy woman to categorize. She was abrasive, profoundly stubborn, and fiercely critical of those she felt had not done enough during the war. She clashed with historians, with other resistance fighters, and with the governments she had served. But you do not survive solitary confinement, a bullet to the head, and the death marches of Ravensbrück by being polite. She lived an incredibly long life, surrounded by her beloved dogs, remaining a formidable presence in Paris until she passed away in 1987 at the age of 91. The story of Mary Lindell forces us to challenge our preconceptions of what a hero looks like. She was not a young, idealistic student. She was a middle-aged, wealthy countess who weaponized her privilege to outsmart an empire of fascists. When the world fell into darkness, she did not hide behind her wealth. She used it as a shield to protect the vulnerable. She took a bullet to the face, stared down the executioners of Ravensbrück, and pulled her fellow women out of the fire through the sheer, unmatched force of her personality. We remember her not because she was perfect, but because when the ultimate test of humanity arrived, the Countess did not bow down. If Mary Lindell's incredible defiance inspired you today, please leave a like on this video to help us share her unmatched legacy. Subscribe to the channel to discover more true, unfiltered stories of the women who fought back from the shadows. Let us know in the comments what part of her survival surprised you the most. And thank you for helping us keep her memory alive. Would you like me to start working on the next script?